back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 7th day of March 2023. My name is Sam Gituku, and it's good time to introduce the panelists once again. Philip Mwema is a tax expert. He is the managing partner at Anderson East Africa. Good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Makali Mulu is an economist, but also a member of parliament from Kitui Central constituency, member of the budget committee since 2013. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, viewers. Dr.
Joy Kiru, an economist and a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Good morning.
Good morning.
And then we have Henry Kabogo, engineer by training?
Yes.
But now entrepreneur and also the chairperson of the Water Bottlers Association of Kenya. Good morning.
Good morning.
And it's good to see all of you here. And of course, our special focus today is on state of the economy. But if you look at the two dailies, it appears that some minds were thinking the same. At the front page of the Daily Nation is Buckle Up, Storm Gathers of Economy Amid Grand Promises. Treasury CS Professor Njuguna Ndung'u is saying that from all the things we have analyzed, 2023 is not looking good. There are clear signals that is going to be a tough year. You look at the exchange rate of the dollar between January 2020 and now, a difference of about 27 shillings. At the moment, as of yesterday, standing at 127 shillings, 75 cents against the US dollar. And this has grown from 123.44 in January 2023. The year of the election, January 2022, it was at 113 shillings, 16 cents. That's an increment of about 14 shillings or thereabout. Then talking about the foreign reserves, the currency reserves, foreign currency reserves have fallen below the desired 4-month cover and closed last Thursday at $6.6 billion, or an equivalent of 3.69 months import cover. 9.145 is the estimated debt, and that is the public debt. We have a ceiling of 10 trillion shillings. The inflation has been going down slightly. In February, it climbed back to 9.2% from 9% in January. And of course, lowering the purchasing power of households. And still, there are some 5 million Kenyans that are facing starvation after the prolonged drought that has been described as the worst in 40 years. On the front page of the Standard, inside Ruto's 200 billion shilling budget, the president assented to bill that allows government to spend 200 billion shillings before the end of the financial year, with the hustlers and suppliers among major beneficiaries. Of course, you see the distribution of that, including 15 billion shillings that has gone to agriculture, set for the fertilizer subsidy program. 60 billion shillings has been approved for pending bills by the government to assuage the pain of government suppliers. However, the amount is a drop in the ocean at a time that the control of budget was speaking about nearly, is it 600 billion shillings or 700 billion shillings in pending bills? Then, of course, 6 billion shillings to be spent to recruit additional teachers, and a further 2 billion shillings to be used for schools feeding program, and another 10 billion shillings that will be used in mitigating the adverse effects of drought. And this forms part of the basis of our conversation this morning as we dive into the state of the economy. And let me begin with you, Dr. Makali Mulu, because you sit in the House and you've been seeing some of these issues come before the House or the committee. When you look at where we are, what would be your comment in terms of Kenyans went through an election hoping that the tough economic times would come to an end? But the past 6 months or so, because it will be 6 months next week on Monday for President Ruto, it would appear that there was a slight slowdown of the inflation, but it's back up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam, for having us in the show. I think today's discussion is very interesting, and more so it must be very interesting to Kenyans, where we are discussing the state of the economy. From where I sit, Sam, when you talk about state of the economy, there are things you analyze to determine state of the economy. And that's why I like what the nation is talking about, because in a very summarized way, it captures the issues.
Right.
These are, we call them normally macroeconomic variables, which are important to determine the state of the economy. And I'm sure Joy will be picking on this from where I will leave it. But let me just pick about 5 of them, just very briefly, to tell Kenyans what is happening. Let's start with the inflation. our expectation as a country is inflation should not go beyond 2.5 above 5 or 2.5 below 5, which means it should be ranging between 2.5 to 7.5. That should be the range. If it's, I will say, because it's one digit inflation figure, but currently we are about 9. What happens normally is when inflation is that high, the person who suffers most is actually the lowest, the so-called the hustlers. So when you connect that with the hustlers, I'm telling you the hustlers are out there suffering seriously. And as a result of that high inflation rate, normally the central bank would come in and then also push it up the interest rates. When you push up the interest rates, then automatically cost of borrowing and all that also increases, meaning more likely it also increase the cost of production. The other important variable which you consider is the issue of the foreign reserves. You've seen the governor saying that normally the best, the recommended rate would be 4 months of imports. Currently, we are at 3.6. I think last month we were about 3.8, which means we are actually doing worse as we move to the future. And then the foreign exchange itself, the foreign exchange rate. The dollar, I think we've lost about more than now 10%. If you compare the December rate and today, we've lost about 10% of the dollar. Look at our expenditure. Currently, we are about 25%. When you look at the revenues, we are around 18%. So when you look at these numbers, Sam, in totality, they are just telling us that we are not heading in the right direction as an economy. And that's why I agree with the CS Treasury, who says that this year, more likely things are not going to be better in any way. So I see a situation where, and I think I said this at one point, and some you looked surprised, and that was last year, when I said that the projections don't look very good. But with what you've just said about the supplementary budget, attempts have been made to push more resources to production sector, which I think is good for the economy. And we are hopeful that as we move to the future, then things might start improving. But currently, the state of the economy is worrying. I would leave it at that.
Right. And Dr. Kiru, when you reflect on, yes, it's worrying, the cabinet secretary who would know is saying as much. Are there quick fixes? Are there solutions that we can use even as we deal with the global impact on the economy, not just in Kenya, but also in the East African region?
Thank you very much. The truth is, what is happening now is not shocking. Even though when the elections were coming up, Kenyans were being told, oh, things will be good, we'll do this within 100 days. And we were here on this same place, same time, saying the way things are, it can only get worse before it gets better. So economists all over the world, and even in Kenya, saw this situation even before it came. Now the question is, even the policymakers, I'm sure they had been advised, and they're being advised every time. And they knew that things are going to be like this because from the way they picked up this government, the fiscal space was so low. They were expansionary fiscal policies had been in place, meaning that it was time to tighten up in order to stabilize the country macroeconomically speaking. And now it's a time now they are facing the real impact of what the policies of the last regime and the last economic context were in terms of trying to correct the mess. Now, what can be done? They're already trying. Like, for example, if you look at the ASLA fund that is supposed to strengthen the small and micro enterprises to cushion jobs, it's a trial even before we come to look at the cons. If you look at these attempts at subsidies, which I'm sure you want us to talk about, they are trying, but the question is it enough? Is the implementation style going to succeed? But the thought, we can see we can see where they're coming from, and we can see what they're thinking. But the question is, are these efforts going to be rewarded? I think that's what we need to be discussing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for you, Henry, because you come from the entrepreneurial sector, how has it been for you, and are you feeling the pinch?
Yeah, we are feeling the pinch. It's been tough, especially for the entrepreneurs, and not only for the entrepreneurs, even for our customers. And from my perspective, we view economics from a point of view of a home. That how much have you been earning? How much have you been spending? So the angle that I will take is the angle of like water. Mm-hmm. The price has been increasing because of inflation, because of unnecessary taxation, especially on that most basic product, which is water. We've been trying to push government and advising them from where we sit, which is bottom up. We've been pushing policies that are favorable not only for government, but also for common mwananchi, because we are actually in touch with the common mwananchi.
Interesting. What do you mean unnecessary taxes?
We have two taxes, like excess duty on water. I term it as unnecessary tax on. It's a tax that should be applied on, what do we call it, on luxurious goods. But when you look at bottled water, the only luxury thing is plastic. So we've been asking government, why don't you push that tax to plastic as opposed to the product itself, which is water? And when you put it on water, it's like there's a lacuna somewhere where even the collecting agency is not even able to differentiate between pure water and mineral water, which is deemed luxurious. Mm-hmm. Because water, we say water is water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Philip, what are your thoughts this morning as you look at what the situation is in the country, whether you're looking at it as at a personal level, at an industry level, but also as a Kenyan?
Oh, thank you. If you look at it first, you must appreciate that as a country, we don't operate in a vacuum. We have a global recession in place. Fact. When the US is in recession, or some catches coughs, the rest of the world catches a cold. So we're in a recession. So we're not operating in a vacuum as a country. And then the question then is, during the times of inflation, how then do you behave as a country? I like what the professor of Treasury CS indicates that, yes, I think he acknowledges that things are thick and we need to tighten our budget. If I look at their supplementary budget, which was released, I think yesterday, it's interesting to note that they've decided to slash the development expenditure and then increase the current expenditure to take care of pending bills. That means they want to release money into the economy so that we can get this economy sort of like churning, moving. So we need that money in circulation. So that's a good move. But again, in a context whereby our public debt, and the matter will come, I think, in Parliament, and Rob Makali should tell us why the need now to change the ceiling of public debt towards our GDP, because our debt, I think it got to a place where the levels are worrying. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at the dollar rate going at 127, at this rate, it might as well get as close as to 135, 140. Businesses are struggling getting $10,000 out of banks. So we are in a place where the demand and supply of dollars is a challenge. And then remember, as a country, we are a net importer. Means when the dollar goes south, the hustlers or the traders will always suffer.
Right.
But in that context, yesterday, I think there was a policy change from the government on the issue of consolidation. Let me break it down. Traders, because they cannot bring imports in bulk, they come together and consolidate the items to bring them to the country for selling. And that's what the Nyamakeba traders have been thriving on. Mm-hmm. And it's been a practice they've paid 200 shillings per kilo on those imports, irrespective of the value of the good. Yesterday, there was a policy change saying that now would, effective March, that's going to change. It's now going to be based on the value of the goods, which is the right thing, strictly speaking, by law, under the East Africa Customs Management Act, to charge. But what does that do to the traders? We're about to see the end of Nyamakima. Because then, what CS Korea in trade is trying to do in terms of protectionist approach to get them moving. On one hand, now the Revenue Authority, which is the body now implementing taxes, saying there's a policy change. We are no longer going to charge 200 shillings per kilo on consolidated. We are now going to go on the value. Things are about to get thick for the trader, for the guy at Nyamakima.
Interesting perspectives here. And I want us to take a little step back and focus on what has been going on, especially the concern even towards the election of the public debt. And one, Rigathi Gachagua, the Deputy President, has been speaking about this, as well as President William Ruto, who spoke earlier. I think it was mid of February during the prayer session at the Nyayo National Stadium. We'll listen to the Deputy President later, but there has been this concern that, yes, the public debt is rising. And I saw a cabinet dispatch talking about changing the ceiling to about 55% of the GDP. And I'm just wondering, Dr. Makali Mulu, 55% of the GDP would actually be less than 10 trillion shillings. Is there a plan to, is it rebase the economy, the GDP itself?
Okay, thank you, Sam. You know, at one point we rebased our economy. I don't think we'll be doing it again soon. But what is happening is, I think this is a matter we've discussed in details, and we've engaged the Treasury. Actually, yesterday, you must be aware there's now a new committee in Parliament, which has been created to take care of public debt specifically. It's called Public Debt and Privatization Committee. And I happen to be the vice chair of that committee. Now, what has happened, Sam, is that we have fixed the debt ceiling at 10 trillion. With the current budget, which we have just now taken through a supplementary budget, the expectation that if they borrow as approved in the budget, the current budget, the 22-23 budget, they will only have room of borrowing a maximum of about 600 billion. So the 2023-2024 budget has only a headroom of only about 600 billion. But if you look at the budget policy statement and the medium-term debt management strategy, they are targeting to borrow 720 billion, which means even before you start, you're already going above the ceiling by about 120 billion. So the question is, if they were to do that, automatically they will be going against the law, because Parliament has fixed the figure at 10 trillion. And what the Cabinet approved is, instead of expressing public debt as a nominal figure, they want to push that to a percentage of the GDP. Normally, as an economist, you know, GDP is a combination of many factors. When you calculate GDPs, you bring a number of variables together. So it's easier if you want to play, play mischief. It's easier to manage the GDP because you can always. But as you are saying currently, if you take 55% of the GDP, you realize we are almost about, that would be about we are around now 13 trillion. That would be about 7 trillion, which is way below even the 10 trillion.
Right.
But they are talking about the medium-term strategy, where they are talking about projections that in the next 3 years, they now want to push that. Currently, we are about 60% of the net present value of GDP. That is now we are, if you go the gross, we are 68%, but net present value, which is very popular with economists, me and Joy here, we are around 60. So what they are saying is they want to push that to 55 in another 3 years. But it's all said and done. At the end of the day, we are not going to solve the issue of public debt by just playing either percentage or nominal. The thing is, we are almost in a situation of debt distress, and it's time we engaged strategies which are going to help us. And that's what we have been discussing on a serious matter. The government is trying, you remember now, initially we had about a 6.8 budget deficit, but they are, because with this reorganization, they have pushed that now to 5.7.
Right.
Although we have our doubts as to whether that figure is really the real figure, they are targeting with this current budget to move to 4.4%, which to me is the right trajectory. They are on the right direction. But that matter is a matter which requires serious discussion, because I don't see it that way. And we have been there before. If you remember, some of you that have been in Parliament for quite some time, when I joined Parliament, it was still a nominal figure. That time we were at around 1.2. Then they wanted to push it to 2.4. We approved. Then we went back now to percentage of GDP. And during the era of CS Rotich and PS Thuke, at some point actually we realized they were playing on Parliament in terms of those figures, the denominator.
Yeah.
That's why when we went back now to nominal again. So you see now we are back. So this music we are playing is not new music. It's music we have been there before.
Okay.
And I would be very interested in economists to see how really they want to navigate around the issue of percentage of the GDP and their nominal figure. But all said and done, what Kenyans, any Kenyan on the street there, what they want is very simple. How much have we borrowed? Are we able to pay? The next important question is, are we borrowing for the right things to do? Because are we borrowing for projects, or are we paying to pay recurrent expenditure? The other matter, which is very critical, Sam, and I think it's important Kenyans know this. There are loans we have committed to, we have signed for, and we are not drawing those loans. So what is happening? The country is spending so much money to pay commitment fee. You'll be surprised for the last 6 months, because this public knowledge is not secret. For the last 6 months, this country is almost paying about 660 million in terms of commitment fee. Loans, we are not drawing a single cent. So imagine we are struggling with Mr. Mwema here collecting taxes, and this tax, instead of going to provide water to Kenyans, instead of going to buy food for Kenyans, instead of improving our roads, we are spending 600 million to pay somebody who has given us a loan, and we are not making use of that loan. So these are the issues. And we put the CS to task, asking, why can't we either cancel some of these loans, or get to a table where we can negotiate with the people who have given us the loans, so that, because we are not drawing them. Imagine, you are paying for money, you are not drawing. So to me, I think really, the Kenya Kwanza government has to do a lot of things different from the way they have been done in the past, if they want to get things right.
Let's listen to the Deputy President now, as he spoke about the international financial systems opening up for Kenya.
I want to give you hope. Before we came in, we had been blacklisted by international lenders. We have now been given thumbs up. We can now engage the international lenders if we want any credit.
And of course, this is surprising, Dr. Kiro, because the campaign of 2022 on both sides, as Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, was about dealing with the public debt, because it was becoming a thorn. And the president came on board and said that we are going to reduce the debt appetite. We are going to make sure that we're able to generate our own local revenue. But when you hear a president and a deputy president celebrating that the financial systems are now opening up for the country, what are we dealing with there?
It gets disappointing. First and foremost, Kenyans are going through a rough period as the government tries to cut back on expenses, as the government tries to macro stabilize. It's very painful in terms of the welfare for the people. And we are trying to create fiscal space, that is true. Trying to cut back on expenditures, trying to go slow on the borrowing, trying to reorganize government expenses while hurting the wananchi. And we are like, if this is the cost you're going to pay so that we gain our freedom from debt, so that we stabilize our economy, so that we gain fiscal space and perhaps prosper thereon, then we could perhaps say it's okay. But now when we hear that now the international markets are opening up, okay, the truth is Kenya cannot do without borrowing. But what kind of loans are supposed to help at this particular point? Concessional loans. That we would say, okay, that is welcome. Of course, there are the cons of those ones, the conditions and all that. But anyway, we have got nothing better than that. Now, the second thing is now, but then if they talk about international markets and we're thinking about, oh my goodness, another Eurobond, and everybody gets scared because it's like you've been struggling to free fiscal space, right, not to help you, but to help a commercial lender out there. And that's very, very disheartening to many Kenyans. It's like feeling like you had died when things were very bad, you resurrected when you created fiscal space, and you are dying again by that fiscal space being taken by loans which are too expensive for you. So that's really what scares us. They should come out clean and tell us what international markets are they looking to borrow from. That's what you want to know as Kenyans, so that we can rest knowing that we are sacrificing for a good cause.
Okay, I want to take a short break. When I come back, I'll be listening to Philip here and Henry on what they have to say about the question of public debt and how to ensure that, yes, we can continue to finance the budget, but also not hurting the local economy and, most importantly, the individuals that live in this country. After the break.